Do you notice how, like, Ben Shapiro takes this tone that these people in this community should be grateful for their governor, their representative, to come down and speak to them? What Ben Shapiro is actually interested in is the treatment of Ron DeSantis when Ron DeSantis does the barest of bare fucking minimum. Because I noticed there was, this shooting was not shocking to me, very quietly covered by a lot of the right-wing media that is pretty popular online. Ben Shapiro put out a little 10-minute segment out of his 40-minute show, but Candace Owens didn't talk about it. And this was yesterday. They might have covered it earlier today. I'm not sure. But, as of Monday, the story broke, I think, on Saturday, if I remember correctly. Ben Shapiro talked for about 10 minutes. Matt Walsh skipped the show that day. Michael Knowles skipped the show, didn't talk about it. Candace Owens didn't talk about it. So it was interesting to see the disinterest in a shooting that led to the death of 3 people, especially considering how interested they all were to cover the Nashville shooter because they were trans. How often did we, how long did we spend, did these guys spend on that shooting compared to this one? So let's kind of take a look at our Wunderkind, our little genius boy, Ben Shapiro. And and the reason why I'm focusing on Shapiro is I want you to really think about this for a minute. 3 people were shot in public at a Dollar General in Jackson, Florida. Ron DeSantis, goes down, gives a, quite frankly, pretty, wrote it on the way over there kind of speech. Jogged off after that, running for president, doesn't seem super interested in the story. And this is what Ben Shapiro is really, sorry, I actually need to look up something real quick. This is the angle, I suppose, that he was interested in. The thing that stuck out to him. So let's go take a look, shall we?
There was this terrible shooting in Jacksonville, Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis went to the site of the shooting to talk with the community. Ron DeSantis has paused his campaign because there are a bunch of issues in the state of Florida, particularly this giant storm that is bearing down on the Gulf Coast. According to Politico, he canceled campaign events this week as a major storm bears down on the state and also in the aftermath of this horrific racist shooting in Jacksonville, which we'll get to momentarily.
So we kind of understand this, right? Off the bat, what is he really interested in talking about? Horse race, the politics. How often do you always hear from these guys? Oh, why are we politicizing this shooting? Why are we making it about politics? Why are we doing this, doing that? Do you think if this was if this was some white kids getting shot by by a racist black man, do you think this would just be, let's talk about Ron DeSantis's campaign. Let's frame this in a way that's not really about the shooting and more or less about the electoral aspirations of the governor of the state.
DeSantis said during a Sunday news conference he's going to remain in Florida in the coming days because Tropical Storm Idalia is expected to become a hurricane and make landfall along the Gulf Coast later this week. He says, we're locked in on this. We're going to get the job done. I'm here. He was slated to campaign in South Carolina on Monday. Probably, I assume Casey will be taking his place at some of those events. DeSantis also went to a vigil on Sunday night for a shooting that left 3 people dead in Jacksonville on Saturday before the gunman killed himself. DeSantis began a Sunday news conference by condemning the shooting. Here was Ron DeSantis showing up at a vigil over the weekend, and a bunch of idiots started shouting.
So let's be clear. The community, because I really love this. Do you notice how, like, Ben Shapiro takes this tone that these people in this community should be grateful for their governor, their representative, to come down and speak to them. Do you notice the kind of like arrogant, the patronizing, arrogant, quite frankly, let's be honest, racist, framing and the way that Ben talks about this? It's kind of evident that Ben Shapiro doesn't give a shit about 3 people who got shot at Dollar General. What he cares about, what Ben Shapiro is actually interested in, is the treatment of Ron DeSantis when Ron DeSantis does the barest of bare fucking minimum for this black community. And to Ben Shapiro, they should be grateful for that. They should shut the fuck up and be grateful that Ron DeSantis even showed up.
Shouting at him because supposedly the governor of the state is not supposed to show up in solidarity with communities that are afflicted by white supremacist mass killings. I'm so confused why you would shout at somebody over this. In any case, here was DeSantis, and the hero of this particular story is a Democrat council member named Jacoby Pittman, who steps in here and basically tells the protesters, shut up, we're all on the same side of this one.
You see? And his hero of the story is the person who wags their finger at the community who is dissatisfied with Ron DeSantis's, not just his his governing of the state, but his again, was that some rousing speech? Was that some was that some kind of impressive show of leadership, that speech that we saw? No. That was a rather 2-3 minutes tops little speech about they're not gonna get away from this, and we're gonna send you money to whatever, so you can buy some security and, better days next time or something. That was a pathetic speech. It really was. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't powerful. It wasn't heartfelt. It was just the speech you give when you have to tell people, when you have to seem like you give a shit and you don't. And the hero to Ben Shapiro is the person who wants to secure resources for their community, having to go down there and, quite frankly, have to stick up for Ron DeSantis, somebody who I have no doubt she probably disagrees with on almost every single political issue, but also somebody who recognizes that this is Ron DeSantis's Florida. Loose gun regulations, a disinterest in teaching African-American history in this country, certainly a prominence or a history of dog whistling to racists, a fascist who, would like to have a registry of books that are or are not appropriate for public consumption. At the end of the day, this is the person who Ben Shapiro wants to highlight, the person he wants to venerate, is the person who wags their finger at that community is dissatisfied with Ron DeSantis. That's why. Because that's worse than the 3 people who have been killed.
We are not going to allow these
When it comes to times of actual crisis, everybody is on the same side. One of the beautiful things I will say about living in Florida, and this is why there are DeSantis Democrats as well in the state of Florida, is that in
let's be really clear. If you're a DeSantis Democrat, you're just a Republican.
Florida, when it comes to times of actual crisis, everybody is on the same side. By the way, that is the nature of what a community should be, is when there's a crisis, all this stuff goes to the wayside. The fact that there are people who are protesting when this sort of stuff happens, and DeSantis is not responsible in any way for this. His response has not been lackluster. It's not as though he went no comment and then went for a week on the beach while all of this sort of stuff happened. This was absolutely apolitical. Good for this city councilwoman for
Yep. And again, how is it not Ron DeSantis? This is his state. These are the gun laws that he's passed and he's allowed to stand on the books. The idea that this is apolitical is bullshit, because the shooter's motivations were not apolitical. Those were quite political. And the response, the fact the response has been so, yeah, we'll make sure to send some money and I'll talk to the sheriff and we'll make sure that he has the resources that he needs. And, we'll make sure that our spaces are safe. Again, it is lackluster. It is bullshit. But for Ben Shapiro and for conservatives, quite frankly, they don't really think there should be more of a response. I think they think that that is exactly all that needed to be said on that. That there isn't more to be done. And that certainly Ron DeSantis and his administration and the way in which that he's run Florida has nothing to do with the fact that a fucking Nazi ends up, radicalizing within the state, buying firearms legally within the state, and then executing 3 people within the state. Nowhere in that does Ron DeSantis or Ben Shapiro think, it's probably, there's a common denominator here. We might want to make sure that everything's on the up and up in our state here. But nope. We'll just send you more money so you can buy some private security. That's all.
For doing that. Believe it or not, there are members of Trump's campaign who are cheering on all of this nonsense. The people who are protesting. Laura Loomer, predictably enough, who is desperate to be Donald Trump's press secretary.
Also, do you notice it's been 2.5 minutes and we've just been talking about the politics around this?
Which for entertainment value would be very, very high, I will say. She, of course, was celebrating people yelling at Ron DeSantis for being terrible enough to show up at this.
Laura Loomer really making
event.
enemies of the right.
I'm glad
now.
He was booed. He is disingenuous. Just an absurdity, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. I don't think that speech was really all that. I don't think that was, I don't think that speech took a lot of effort there. But it kind of does seem like Ben. I haven't paid too much attention, but it does seem like the Daily Wire has been pulling for DeSantis pretty much since like the start of the primary. But I have noticed that it doesn't seem like they're willing to go after Trump very much quite yet. They're willing to just kind of call balls and strikes as as slanted as they can for Donald Trump, but while leaving the door open of like, hey, but if this doesn't work out, we have DeSantis. They're probably still making they probably honestly have the same hope that DeSantis does, that Trump has to drop out and then they can all just coalesce behind Ronnie Boy. Will that happen? I don't know.
She said, while Governor DeSantis was heckled at a vigil for the victims of a shooting in Jacksonville, Florida Dollar General today, comments he made back in July about Floridas are coming back to bite him in the ass. Come on. Like, seriously, come on. Ridiculous kind of stuff. But DeSantis is doing what he's supposed to do. He's
and also
the governor
the people
of Florida.
living that state know the stuff he's saying.
And he is going to be there overseeing whatever happens with regard to
what
this
a great
Florida
candidate.
hurricane.
What a great candidate.
Is there self?
Nope. And now we got an ad. And then, oh boy. God damn, dude. They have so many ads. How far were we into that? We weren't that far into the video. Like, when did the ad start? When did the ad start? Like what, around the 3-minute mark? Yeah, something like that. Around the 3-minute mark, and we're already like pushing past 5 minutes.
Better Sleep starts right now, so head on over again.
Oh my God.
helixsleep.com/Ben and use.
Enough.
Meanwhile, it is worthwhile noting here that, again, in the state of Florida, Florida is a fascinating and complex state. I know because I now live here. I'm a resident. And, this particular shooting is obviously, it was motivated by white supremacy. According to the Wall Street Journal, authorities in Jacksonville, Florida, identified a local 21-year-old Sunday as a white gunman who shot and killed 3 black victims at a Dollar General store before killing himself. An attack local and federal officials said was racially motivated. The gunman then shot himself. He was carrying a handgun and a military-style semi-automatic rifle with swastikas marked on it. According to the police, the Jacksonville Sheriff T.K. Waters said this was pretty obviously motivated by hatred of black people.
Our community is grappling to understand why this atrocity occurred.
And we saw a bit of this. Well, we can actually play it. I'm fine with playing it.
I urge us all not to look.
Oh, also, this is a really small detail. I'm going to do this so you guys can see it. this is a really small detail, but pay attention, especially to Fox News. You'll notice that Fox News has a habit of, when it's a white shooter, they will simply say 3 people killed in Jacksonville shooter. But then when it's if it's a black person committing a crime, they will either identify them by race or identify them by name. You'll kind of notice that a little bit. It's a interesting trend that I've seen it before, where when it's a white shooter, it's kind of a bit more obscured. So when people are flipping channels, it's like, oh, just another shooter, whatever. But whenever it's black, when it's black people who are committing crimes, killing, whatever it might be. If you commit a crime and you're black, on Fox News, they'll make sure to identify you as such. But if you're white, especially if it's a racially motivated crime, we might, maybe we forgot to put that in the chyron.
Said this was pretty obviously motivated by black people.
Our community is grappling to understand why this atrocity occurred. I urge us all not to look for sense in a senseless act of violence. There's no reason or explanation that we'll ever account for the shooter's decisions and actions. His sickening ideology is not representative of the values of this Jacksonville community that we all love so much. We are not a community of hate. We stand united with the good and decent people of this city. We reject this inexcusable violence. And this agency will not rest until this investigation is complete and every available avenue of accountability has been exhausted.
Okay, it is perfectly worthwhile to talk about the ideology of the shooter. The shooter did not have a criminal history, but in 2016 was named in a domestic disturbance call. In 2017, had to be put on a 72-hour hold for a mental health evaluation. I will point out at this point that whenever there's a white supremacist shooting, we know the motives like right away. And whenever there is a pretty obviously motivated anti-Christian shooting, say in Nashville, Tennessee, just to take a quick example, we still don't have the manifesto of that shooter. And it has been how many months? Since...
Whoa. Okay. So this is wonderful. This is exactly what I mean. Do you notice that he's not really interested in talking about the ideology of the shooter? Do you notice that he's not interested in actually interrogating the thought processes of like his Nazi ideology and white supremacy? Do you notice that the only thing he's interested in, the only reason he brings up the ideology of this person is so that he can then turn it back to, but what about the Nashville shooter? And let's be clear, the only reason he brings up the Nashville shooter is, again, because they were trans. That's it. That's the only reason. That's the entirety for the reason. Because, like, at the end of the day, these guys don't have an interest in stemming this stuff in their communities. These far-right influencers, these far-right YouTube channels, all of these guys, Matt Walsh, all the rest of them have zero interest in actually interrogating the white supremacy that they advocate for and that they propagate, because they don't want to be tied to this stuff. They don't want to be tied to white supremacist shooters, to Nazis. Ben Shapiro doesn't want to talk about, there seems to be this person, if we hear in the future that, this guy watches Matt Walsh videos, almost, it's not inconceivable. Do you think do you think Ben Shapiro is going to come out and say like, we disavow Matt Walsh. Oh, this isn't the kind of, no, shh. If that information ever came out, Ben's going to shh. He ain't going to say a damn word. He's going to go radio fucking silent. Because they don't want to be tied to this stuff. Even though they know that they're only a skip and a toss from them being able to tie these sorts of radical extremists, these fucking psychos, to the content that they create, to the rhetoric that they push.
So all of that happened, which seems bizarre.
Also, by the way, the reason, and here's the actual reason. Ben will say, we haven't seen the manifesto. Would you like to know the reason why we know this stuff about white supremacist shooters and we don't know this stuff about, as the example he picks, why we don't know the Nashville shooter? Because it doesn't seem like the Nashville shooter published it on the internet. It doesn't seem like they have this long paper trail of, going online and talking about how much they hate Christians. It's just not there. Whereas with most of these Nazi shooters, they can't help themselves. They're all fucking brain-rotted idiots. They all go onto the internet and they all go and type the N-word and talk about how much they're going to be the savior of Western civilization and everything in between. Because they're all too stupid to know that not only are they not popular, they're not well liked in the United States, in civil, polite society. And because their racism blinds them so much, because they think, oh, well, I'm white. What do you mean? People will accept me and my racism because I'm white. No. This isn't this isn't the 1950s. This isn't the 1960s. That's just not gonna fly anymore. But, asking these morons who've bought into this kind of ideology to, think a little bit and think to themselves, maybe I shouldn't publish paragraphs long, book long fucking manifestos about how much I just fucking hate non-white people. Maybe I shouldn't post that on the internet. But no, they're too stupid. They're just too dumb. They have no self-awareness. They have no idea that all of their ideas are hated by most people.
To me, at the very, very least, the shooting obviously was condemned by everyone, ranging from President Biden, who said we must refuse to live in a country where black families going to the store or black students going to school live in fear of being gunned down because of the color of their skin, which of course is true. Governor Desantis said something similar. He called the shooting horrific and said the state was offering support to the local authorities. But as I say, Florida is a fascinating and complex place. Here was Governor DeSantis speaking about the shooting.
Really, and now we're back to talking about
Florida,
DeSantis.
the state and its people condemn the horrific racially motivated murders perpetrated by a deranged scumbag in.
And once again, he's going to say a bunch of stuff here. I want you to identify for me what's going to change in Florida policy to make this stop.
In Jacksonville at the Dollar General store. Perpetrating violence of this kind is unacceptable, and targeting people due to their race has no place in the state of Florida. Casey and I extend condolences to the victims of their families on behalf of the entire state of Florida.
And that's it. There's not a solution to be found. Just we'll throw some money on it.
Meanwhile, the sheriff over here, again, a man named TK Waters, he says, you want to try to blame the guns. It's not about the guns. It's about the person who's wielding the guns.
The story is always about guns. The people are bad. This guy's a bad guy. If I could take my gun off right now and I lay it on this counter, nothing will happen. It'll sit there. But as soon as a wicked person grabs a hold of that handgun and starts shooting people with it, there's the problem. The problem is the individual.
Now, I'm not surprised that should we look up the rest of that clip? I don't know at what point, because I'd love to hear the rest of that, because that's a pretty condensed clip. But also keep in mind, sheriffs are frequently incorrect when it comes to gun policy, because it's just not really, most cops honestly like shooting. They like they're very pro Second Amendment sort of group. But now kind of, let's see. I don't think, I feel like, how long could this be? 21-year-old? Now this is, no, not, yeah, I get it. Yep. Ooh, if we can find the transcript, that'd actually be great. Control F. Right. FFL transferred to Wildwood. Gunshot. Didn't have guns back in 2017. As a matter of fact, looks like he purchased the guns completely legally. Let's see. Here it is. Okay. We'll start with this.
So it appears they did everything that they were supposed to do as a gun dealer. There was nothing indicating that he should not own guns.
So then standing here on the other side of this podium.
I don't know. Could it possibly be the history of online activity that should have, disqualified him? Or I don't know if there was somebody with some sense around him, if there were red flag laws in place, they could have reported him to the police as a danger to himself or others. Just a thought.
He possessed these guns legally. We know what he did with them. What could have been done? What should have been done?
Well, we have to stop people that have bad intentions. Guns, the story is always about guns. The people are bad. This guy's a bad guy. If I could take my gun off right now and I lay it on this counter, nothing will happen. It'll sit there. But as soon as a wicked person grabs a hold of that handgun and starts shooting people with it, there's the problem. The problem is the individual. Now, guns are a tool that people use to do horrible things. But
And let's keep in mind, it's always funny when people say guns are tools, because at the end of the day, guns are tools for hunting. That's the like normal or at the very least the like tool usage. You don't use guns to open doors. You don't use guns to fucking install install your TV. You don't fucking use guns to do anything but hunt animals or kill people. That is their use. There is no tertiary use for guns. Period. And the idea that like, oh, guns aren't the problem. Well, the existence of guns isn't the problem. That is correct. The access to guns are the problem. He uses the example of like, oh, if I put my gun down right in front of me, it's only dangerous once somebody with bad intentions picks it up. Well, first of all, leaving aside gun safety, which we all know, all guns are loaded at all times. You do not play with the gun gremlins. But keep in mind, we have a relationship in this country, and I bet a relationship in Florida where, guess what? The idea that people just put guns in front of folks, the whole premise of like all it takes is for a bad guy to walk up and take that gun. The problem is how easy it would be for them to take it now, isn't it? The problem isn't the gun sitting there. It's the fact that you just left it unattended, sitting at a podium, ready for anybody to come pick it up. And that's what the relationship is with guns in the United States. We are awash with firearms that are easily begotten by our citizens. And because of that, because we can't tell intention by looking at somebody, because that we can't, gun shop owners can't read minds. Yeah, there should probably be a few barriers to make sure that people are going to operate them safely. It's very odd to me that whenever we talk about, people's right to bear arms, we don't have this for very many things. This industry where Americans have a right to access a product. That's not really like, and I don't mean like broadly. I mean a specific kind of product in our Constitution. We have this very special relationship with guns. And for that, I think we also need to have a special relationship with the law around guns. To acknowledge that all it takes when I put my gun down, if I have my gun right here, I put it down, all it takes is a bad person to pick it up, then maybe the answer is, maybe it shouldn't be that easy. Maybe all it should take is someone coming over and picking up that gun. What's up, Nova Liam? How are you doing this fine evening or morning, wherever you might be?
it's the individuals that wield these things. So we are working hard to try to stop that. But in this situation,
and again, and how do you do that? If you don't have gun control laws, if you don't have restrictions, if you don't have some system of checks to discern in some form or fashion who these people are, this is just going to keep happening. It's going to happen again, and 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 again, and again, and again. You can look up you can look up how many shootings we have in the United States. We far outpace every single country on this goddamn planet. Do you think we outpace them? in terms of our like shitty mental health. You know, it's funny because like Japan as a country has a pretty not great relationship with mental health over there. But do you notice how often there are instances of gun violence? Their president, I think it was their president. They don't have a prime minister, right? They have a president. Their president gets shot by a dude who has to build a whole ass firearm. If that was the United States, he would have bought it like a good old boy at the shop down the street, loaded up some ammo, and went out and shot the president. That's how easy it is for people who want to commit violence in this country. So you must address access. This isn't about guns being, none of that. None of all the tertiary bullshit. This is about access and how loose and how open our access is to firearms. Anyway, it is morning, 3 a.m. Oh my God. Doing all right. I was really, really like dead tired yesterday, so we didn't do that much. Played some video games, did like 2 stories. That knife crime replaced gun crime. I'm not sure if it's true or not. Argued that knife. I mean, look, at the end of the day, knives are a lot less effective than guns. Like, violence is always going to happen, right? But like, what do you do with knives? Oh, like people say like, oh, well, guns are tools, right? Well, knives are also tools. But knives, there's at least like you cut meat. You can open boxes. There's, for any bladed almost anything, there are like 10 to 12 different use cases that aren't stab a person, right? Whereas guns, there just isn't. There isn't this wide range of use cases for firearms. It's hunt animals, kill people. That's it. They're here for those 2 things. So if you're not hunting, I guess one could say target practice, but that's not that's like recreational. That's not a necessity. So if you're buying a firearm, if you're not hunting, you're probably intending one day you use it on somebody. That's just kind of the reality of it. Most people, I think, most gun owners, and by most, I mean a vast, vast majority, buy guns because they like shooting and are like it as a recreational sporting thing. I think a lot of people participate in that, and and like a smaller group, but also very large group, get it for self-defense because, they, maybe own a home or they live in a neighborhood that they don't love or whatever. Other people have those reasons. And then you have people who just buy guns because they like guns. And those sorts of people are the loudest because it's a hobby to them. But their hobby is costing us like untold numbers of lives. It's just not worth it. The thing that they tell, like at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to like click on one of these like things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.